Chapter 1: The Defiance at Pyke. The wind howled across Pyke's jagged cliffs, salt spray stinging Theon Greyjoy's face as he stood before his father, Balon Greyjoy, in the damp hall of the seastone chair. Torches flickered, casting shadows on the stone walls carved with krakens. Balon's eyes, hard as iron, bored into Theon. "You're no son of mine," he growled, his voice low and venomous. "You're Stark's pup, soft from their northern snows." Theon's heart pounded, the weight of his choice pressing against his ribs. Balon leaned forward, his weathered hands gripping the chair's arms. "The North bleeds while Robb Stark fights Jaime Lannister. We'll take their lands, their castles, their lives. Join me, Theon, and claim your birthright as Ironborn." Theon's fingers tightened around his bow, the yew wood smooth under his calloused hands. He'd sailed to Pyke on Robb's orders, sent to secure Ironborn ships for the war against Cersei and her kin. But Balon's words revealed a darker plan: to raid the North, to burn Winterfell, to betray the Starks who'd raised Theon as their own. Memories flooded him: Robb's laughter in Winterfell's Godswood, Ned Stark's quiet lessons on honor, Arya's fierce grin as she sparred with sticks. The Starks weren't his blood, but they were his family. Balon's sneer twisted, demanding an answer. "I choose Robb," Theon said, his voice steady despite the storm within. The hall fell silent, the guards' hands hovering over their axes. Balon's face darkened, a vein pulsing at his temple. "Traitor," he spat, rising. "You'd forsake your kin for wolves?" Theon stood tall, meeting his father's gaze. "The Starks gave me a home, you gave me chains." Balon roared, signaling his men. "Seize him." Theon moved swiftly, dodging a guard's grasp, his boots slipping on the slick stone floor. He sprinted for the door, heart racing as shouts echoed behind him. Outside, the night was black, the sea churning below the cliffs. Theon knew Pyke's paths, its hidden alleys from childhood games. He reached the docks where his longship, Salt Serpent, rocked against the tide. A handful of his crew, men loyal to him, not Balon, stood ready, sensing trouble. "To the ship," Theon shouted, drawing his bow. An arrow flew, felling a pursuing guard, and his men scrambled aboard. Oars bit the water as arrows hissed past, some striking the hull. Theon stood at the stern, knocking another arrow, his eyes scanning the dark shore. Balon's men swarmed the docks, their torches like angry stars. "Row, damn you," Theon barked, his voice cutting through the wind. The Salt Serpent pulled free, sails catching the gusts. Theon's chest tightened, betraying his kin cost him more than he'd admit. Pyke faded into the mist, Balon's curse ringing in his ears. "You're no Greyjoy," sailing for Riverrun, Theon penned a raven to Robb, confessing Balon's plot to raid the North. The words felt like a blade, carving his loyalty into truth. Catelyn Stark's distrust loomed in his mind. She'd never seen him as more than Ironborn, but Robb's faith anchored him. Theon sharpened his arrows, the whetstone's rasp steadying his nerves. Westeros's wars demanded sacrifice, and he'd chosen his side. The stars above offered no comfort, only cold judgment. Balon's rebellion would meet Theon's bow, and the Lannisters would learn the North's strength. His choice at Pyke would ripple across the realm, reshaping the Game of Thrones. Theon stood watch, ready to face the storm he'd unleashed. Chapter 2: The Brothers' Oath. Dawn broke over Riverrun, its pink light glinting off the Tumblestone's waters as Theon Greyjoy rode into Robb Stark's camp. Wolf banners snapped in the breeze, and the air hummed with the clatter of swords and the low murmur of northern lords. Theon's cloak was salt-stained, his face gaunt from the perilous voyage from Pyke. He dismounted, his boots sinking into the mud, and approached Robb's tent, guarded by men who eyed him warily. Inside, Robb stood over a map, his auburn hair catching the candlelight while Catelyn Stark watched from the shadows, her blue eyes sharp. Theon knelt, his voice steady but low. "Balon plans to raid the North, my lord. He'll strike Torrens Square, Deepwood Motte, even Winterfell while you fight Jaime Lannister." The tent fell silent, Robb's hand pausing over the map. Catelyn's lips tightened, but Robb's grey eyes met Theon's, searching. "You sailed back to warn us," Robb said, not a question but a statement. Theon nodded, the weight of his choice at Pyke still raw. "I swore to serve you, Robb, I'm no traitor." Robb stepped forward, clasping Theon's shoulder, his grip firm. "You chose us over your blood. You're my brother, Theon, now and always." The words warmed Theon's chest, easing the ache of Balon's disownment, but Catelyn's voice cut through, cold as winter. "He's Ironborn, Robb, their loyalty shifts like the tide. Theon's jaw clenched, but he held her gaze. "I've no love for Balon's schemes, Lady Stark. I know his tactics, let me use them to protect the North." Robb raised a hand, silencing his mother. "Theon's proven himself, I trust him." Turning to the map, Robb traced the northern coast. "Balon's ships are fast, his men ruthless. What do you propose?" Theon leaned forward, pointing to Torrens Square. "Fortify here first. I know their routes, their signals. With Sir Roderick Castle, I can hold the coast." Robb nodded, his trust unwavering. "You'll lead a force there, Sir Roderick will join you." The camp outside buzzed as news spread of Theon's return. Northern lords gathered, their faces a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Lord Umber muttered about Ironborn treachery, but Robb's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "Theon Greyjoy is one of us. He's risked his life to warn us. Any man who doubts him answers to me." The lords fell silent, though their eyes lingered on Theon. He felt their weight, the need to prove himself anew. Later, Theon trained with the camp's archers, his bow singing as arrows split targets. Robb joined him, sharing tales of Winterfell's hunts, their laughter easing Theon's tension. But Catelyn's words echoed, her distrust a shadow. Theon confided in Robb, admitting his fear of failing. "You've never failed me," Robb said, his voice steady. "We're stronger with you." Theon nodded, gripping his bow tighter. As he rode north with Sir Roderick, the wolf banner high, Theon's heart steadied. Catelyn's coldness stung, but Robb's faith was a shield. He studied the horizon, imagining Balon's longships. Westeros's wars tested every bond, and Theon would forge his loyalty in battle. His arrows were ready, his resolve iron. The North's survival depended on him, and he'd not falter. The road to Torrens Square stretched ahead, a path to redemption in a realm torn by ambition. Chapter 3: The Battle of Torrens Square. Theon Greyjoy stood atop Torrens Square's wooden palisade, the salt wind carrying the scent of the sea. Sir Roderick Castle, grizzled and steady, barked orders to northern spearmen below, their shields gleaming under a grey dawn. Theon's bow rested against his shoulder, arrows fletched with raven feathers tucked in his quiver. Robb Stark had sent him here to defend the North's coast, trusting Theon's knowledge of Ironborn tactics. Balon Greyjoy's longships were coming. Theon felt it in his bones, the same instinct that guided his arrows true. He scanned the horizon, where mist clung to the waves like a shroud. "They'll strike soon," he told Roderick, his voice low. "Asha leads them. She favors dawn attacks, using fog for cover." Roderick nodded, his beard flecked with frost. "You're certain, lad?" Theon's jaw tightened. The Northmen respected him for Robb's sake, but their eyes still questioned his Ironborn blood. "I know my sister," he said, the word sister tasting bitter. Asha Greyjoy, Balon's favoured heir, would spearhead this raid, aiming to gut the North while Robb fought Jaime Lannister. Theon had betrayed his kin at Pyke, choosing Robb, and now he'd face them in battle. The weight of it pressed against his chest, but he pushed it down, focusing on the sea. A horn blared, shattering the quiet. Longships broke through the mist, their prows carved with krakens, oars slicing the water. "Archers!" Theon shouted, knocking an arrow. His heart raced, but his hands were steady. Northern bowmen lined the walls, their strings taut. "Wait for my signal." Theon's eyes locked on the lead ship, Asha's black sails snapping in the wind. He knew her tactics, feint left, strike right. "Now," he roared, loosing his arrow. It arced, piercing an Ironborn helmsman, and chaos erupted. Arrows rained, felling raiders as ships rammed the shore. Ironborn swarmed the beach, axes gleaming, but Theon's traps, hidden stakes and pits, slowed them. Northern spearmen charged, Roderick's voice rallying them. Theon's bow sang, each arrow finding a mark, a captain's throat, a raider's chest. Asha's voice cut through the din, urging her men forward. Theon spotted her, her helm glinting, and hesitated, his arrow trained on her. "No," he muttered, shifting aim, felling her shield-bearer instead. He couldn't kill her, not yet. The battle turned as northern cavalry flanked the raiders, Theon's strategy unfolding perfectly. Asha's men faltered, and Theon led a sortie, his bow trading for a sword. He clashed with an Ironborn, steel ringing until he disarmed him. Asha, cornered, fought fiercely but was overwhelmed. Theon bound her wrists, her eyes burning with defiance. "You're no Greyjoy," she spat. Theon's heart ached, but he held firm. "I'm Robb's man." The victory secured Torrens Square, northerners cheering Theon's name. Roderick clapped his shoulder, but whispers of Ironborn lingered. Theon sent a raven to Robb, proposing a parley with Balon using a Shah as leverage. Alone, he cleaned his bow, guilt-gnawing. Fighting his kin scarred him, but Robb's trust anchored him. Westeros's wars demanded blood, and Theon's arrows would answer. He gazed at the sea, a Shah's words echoing, ready for the next storm. Chapter 4: The parley's collapse. The sea churned under a leaden sky as Theon Greyjoy stood on the deck of Robb Stark's flagship, Winter's Fang, anchored in neutral waters. Salt spray stung his face, mingling with the tension knotting his gut. Robb, clad in mail, stood beside him, his direwolf Grey Wind pacing the deck. A Shah Greyjoy, wrists bound but head high, smirked despite her captivity. They awaited Balon Greyjoy's longship, its kraken sail a dark stain on the horizon. Theon's bow hung at his back, useless in this parley, but his fingers itched for it. Robb's trust had brought him here, to broker peace with his father and save the North from Ironborn raids. But Theon knew Balon's heart, hard as Pyke's cliffs, unyielding as the drowned god. The longship drew near, Balon's gaunt figure at the prow, his eyes locking on Theon with venom. "Traitor," Balon growled as he boarded, his voice carrying over the waves. Theon's chest tightened, but he stood tall, Robb's hand on his shoulder steadying him. "Lord Balon." Robb began, his voice clear. "The North fights Cersei and Jaime Lannister. Join us and we'll share the spoils of their defeat." Balon laughed, a harsh bark. "The North is weak, boy king. I'll take your lands while you bleed in the South." Theon stepped forward, his voice cutting through the wind. "Father, the Ironborn can't hold the North. Ally with Robb and we'll win glory together." Balon's gaze burned. "You're no son of mine, Stark's dog. You betrayed your blood at Pyke, and now you parade my daughter in chains." Ashaz's eyes flicked to Theon, a mix of scorn and calculation. "Release her," Balon demanded, "and bend the knee, or I'll burn Winterfell to ash." Robb's jaw clenched, but he kept his tone even. "Ashaz's safe, and we offer alliance, not submission. Fight with us or face our steel." Balon sneered, turning to his men. "Hear this pup bark." Theon's heart sank, sensing the parley's collapse. "Father, please," he said, softer now. "The Ironborn die for nothing in this war. Join us for Ashaz's sake." Balon's face twisted. "You're dead to me, Theon. The drowned god will judge you." Ashaz spoke, her voice sharp. "Some lords tire of your raids, father. They might listen to another voice." Balon silenced her with a glare, but Theon caught her hint, dissent among the Ironborn. Before Robb could respond, Balon stormed back to his ship, shouting orders. Longships retreated, leaving Theon's hope sinking like a stone. Robb clasped his arm. "You tried, Theon. We'll hold the North without him." Back at Riverrun, Robb tasked Theon with coastal defense, trusting his strategies. Catelyn Stark watched, her distrust softening but lingering. Theon studied Ironborn maps, Ashaz's words echoing, "So dissent, weaken Balon." His bow gleamed, ready for war. Westeros's game demanded cunning, and Theon would play it, his loyalty to Robb unwavering despite his father's curse. Chapter 5: The Triumph at Oxcross. The western hills glowed under a blood-red sunset as Theon Greyjoy rode beside Robb Stark, their army snaking through the rugged terrain toward Oxcross. The North's banners, grey wolves on white, flapped in the crisp air, and the clink of mail mingled with the low hum of men's voices. Theon's bow hung across his back, his quiver heavy with arrows fletched in black. Robb, his face hardened by war, had summoned Theon from Torrens Square after the victory against Ashaz Greyjoy's raid. Now they marched to strike Tywin Lannister's forces, a bold move to cripple the Lannisters' hold on the Westerlands. Theon's heart beat steady, but the weight of northern eyes pressed on him, men who still saw an Ironborn despite Robb's trust. "Tywin's camp lies beyond that ridge," Robb said, reining his horse beside Theon. His direwolf Grey Wind loped nearby, eyes glinting. "Your scouts confirmed it." Theon nodded, his voice low. "They're poorly guarded, overconfident. We hit at dusk, use the shadows." Robb's grey eyes met his, a flicker of gratitude there. "You've never steered me wrong, Theon." The words warmed him, but Catelyn Stark's presence, riding behind with Sir Brynden Tully, chilled his spine. Her distrust lingered, even after his capture of Ashaz. As the army crept toward Oxcross, Theon led the archers, positioning them along a wooded rise. The Lannister camp sprawled below, tents aglow with torchlight, men laughing over cookfires. Theon's fingers twitched, recalling Balon's scorn at Pyke. He'd chosen Robb, and tonight his arrows would prove it. Robb signaled and the Northmen surged, swords drawn, grey winds howl piercing the dusk. Theon's bow sang, arrows felling sentries before they could scream. Chaos erupted as Robb's cavalry charged, but a glint of steel caught Theon's eye, a Lannister assassin cloaked in shadow, creeping toward Robb. Theon knocked an arrow, his breath steady and loosed. The shaft pierced the assassin's throat, dropping him inches from Robb. Robb spun, sword raised, then saw Theon's signal. "Keep moving," Theon shouted, loosing another arrow into a Lannister knight. The battle raged, Northmen cutting through Tywin's unprepared forces. Theon's archers held the ridge, their volleys relentless, while Robb's sword carved a path through the enemy. Tywin's men broke, fleeing into the night, their camp a smouldering ruin. As dawn broke, the Northmen cheered, piling Lannister arms in victory. Robb summoned Theon before the lords, his voice ringing. "Theon Greyjoy saved my life tonight. He's no iron-born traitor, he's a Stark in heart." Kneeling, Theon felt Robb's sword touch his shoulders. "Rise, Sir Theon," Robb said, knighting him. The lords roared approval, but Catelyn's eyes narrowed, her voice low to Robb later. "He's loyal now, but iron-born blood runs deep." Theon overheard, his jaw clenching, but vowed silently to prove her wrong. He trained archers that day, arrows splitting logs, his focus razor-sharp. Robb shared plans to seize the Westerlands, trusting Theon's counsel. But whispers of Cersei's schemes in King's Landing reached them, and Theon warned Robb of her cunning. His bow gleamed, ready for the next fight. As campfires flickered, Theon stood watch, Catelyn's doubt a shadow, but Robb's faith his shield. Westeros's wars demanded blood, and Theon's loyalty would forge the North's victory. Chapter 6: The Ironborn Fracture. Riverrun's stone walls loomed under a drizzle as Theon Greyjoy descended to the dungeons, his boots echoing on the damp steps. Asha Greyjoy, his sister and captive, sat chained in a cell, her dark hair matted but her smirk defiant. Theon's victory at Torrens Square had secured the North's coast, but Balon's raids continued, a thorn in Robb Stark's campaign against Tywin Lannister. Theon's heart was torn, loyalty to Robb clashed with the guilt of fighting his kin. Asha's capture offered a chance to weaken Balon, and Theon needed her insight. "You look miserable, brother," Asha taunted, her voice sharp. "Stark's leash too tight." Theon leaned against the bars, his bow slung across his back. "I chose Robb, Asha, help me end Balon's madness." Her eyes narrowed, calculating. Some lords tire of father's endless raids. House Harlaw whispers of peace, offer them power and they'll bend. Theon's pulse quickened. If Ironborn houses defected, Robb's North would stand stronger. He nodded, memorizing her words. "You'd betray Balon?" he asked. Asha shrugged. "I'd save the Ironborn from his folly." Theon reported to Robb in Riverrun's Great Hall, where wolf banners hung beside Tully Trout. Robb, poring over maps, listened intently as Theon outlined Asha's revelation. "Send envoys to Harlaw," Theon urged. "Promise them trade, lands, Balon's losing their faith." Robb's grey eyes met his, trusting. "Do it, Theon, you know them best." Catelyn Stark, seated nearby, watched with less venom than before. "A bold plan," she said, her tone softer. "If it fails, the North pays the price." Theon met her gaze. "It won't fail, my lady." He dispatched ravens to house Harlaw, offering alliance under Robb's banner. Days later, a reply came. Lord Roderick Harlaw pledged ships, swayed by Theon's promises and Balon's faltering raids. The news bolstered Robb's camp, northern lords toasting Theon's name. But Theon felt torn, his ironborn blood a quiet ache. He visited Asha again, her smirk gone. "Harlaw's with you," she said. "Others may follow." Theon nodded, grateful but wary. She played her own game. Theon trained Riverrun's archers, his arrows splitting targets, his mind on Balon's next move. Northerners now called him Stark's Arrow, but Catelyn's softened gaze held caution. A raven brought news of Tywin regrouping, and Theon warned Robb of a counterstrike. "We'll hit them first," Robb said, trusting Theon's strategies. Theon studied Ironborn sigils, plotting to sway more houses. His bow gleamed, ready for war. As rain fell, Theon stood on Riverrun's battlements, Asha's words echoing, "Save the Ironborn." He felt neither fully Stark nor Greyjoy, but Robb's faith anchored him. Catelyn approached, her voice low. "You've done well, Theon, I misjudged you." The words startled him, easing a weight. He nodded, gripping his bow. Westeros's wars shifted like tides, and Theon would steer them for Robb. Balon's grip weakened, but Tywin's threat loomed. Theon's arrows would answer both, his loyalty a beacon in the storm. Chapter 7 The Capture of Harrenhal. The blackened towers of Harrenhal loomed under a bruised sky, their melted stone a testament to ancient dragonfire. Theon Greyjoy crouched in the underbrush, his bow in hand, leading a scouting party through the marshy lands surrounding the cursed castle. Robb Stark's army, fresh from Oxcross, aimed to seize Harrenhal from Tywin Lannister's grip, a move to choke his supply lines. Theon's cloak blended with the shadows, his breath steady as he signaled his men, northern archers trained under his eye, to spread out. His iron-born instincts, honed by years at sea, guided him through the terrain, but his heart bore the weight of proving himself to Robb's lords, who still whispered Ironborn behind his back. Theon's scouts had mapped Harrenhal's weaknesses, crumbling walls, sparse patrols, and a garrison weakened by Tywin's retreat. He relayed this to Robb at dusk, the young king's tent aglow with candlelight. Robb, his direwolf grey wind at his side, studied Theon's sketched map. "You're sure of this breach?" Robb asked, grey eyes searching. Theon nodded. "Here the walls half collapsed. We hit at midnight, silent and swift." Catelyn Stark, her auburn hair braided tightly, watched Theon with less suspicion than before, her trust growing since his knighthood at Oxcross. "A bold plan, Sir Theon," she said, her tone measured. "If it fails, we're exposed." Theon met her gaze. "It won't, my lady." As midnight cloaked the land, Theon led the vanguard, scaling Harrenhal's ruined wall with ropes and grapples. His arrows silenced sentries, their bodies slumping into the shadows. Inside, the castle's vast halls echoed with snores, the garrison unprepared. Theon's heart raced, memories of Pyke's defiance mingling with his resolve to serve Robb. He signaled Robb's forces and the Northmen poured in, swords drawn, grey winds snarl leading the charge. The battle was swift, Lannister men cut down or surrendered, their banners trampled under northern boots. Theon patrolled the captured halls, his bow ready, when a scrawny servant caught his eye, a girl with matted hair and fierce eyes. She flinched but didn't run, her gaze familiar. "Winterfell," Theon whispered, heart leaping. "Could it be Arya Stark?" He approached, voice soft. "I'm Theon, Robb's man." "You're safe." Her eyes widened, trust flickering, but she stayed silent. Theon didn't press, sensing her fear, but vowed to protect her. Searching the Castellan's chambers, Theon found a letter sealed with a rose, House Tyrell plotting with Cersei to bolster the Lannisters. He delivered it to Robb, who cursed under his breath. "Margaery Tyrell's hand," Robb said. "We need the reach neutral." Theon suggested envoys to counter the alliance, earning Robb's nod. Catelyn's gaze softened further. "You've sharp eyes, Sir Theon," she said, a rare warmth in her voice. Theon trained Harrenhal's new archers, his arrows splitting charred beams, but Arya's presence haunted him. Northern lords cheered his role in the victory, yet whispers of his iron-born blood persisted. As Harrenhal's shadows deepened, Theon stood watch, the Tyrell letter a warning of Cersei's reach. Westeros's wars demanded vigilance, and Theon's loyalty to Robb would light the North's path, his bow ready for the next strike. Chapter 8 The Stark Reunion. Riverrun's river breeze carried the scent of rain as Theon Greyjoy escorted a cloaked figure through the castle's gates, his bow slung across his back. The girl beside him, Arya Stark, kept her hood low, her fierce eyes scanning the guards. Theon's heart pounded. He'd found her in Harrenhal, disguised as a servant, and convinced her to trust him. Her whispered confession, "I'm Arya," had stunned him, rekindling memories of Winterfell's laughter. Robb Stark, unaware of her survival, fought to hold the North against Tywin Lannister, and Theon vowed to reunite them. Catelyn Stark's growing trust in him, earned through battles, made this moment pivotal. He'd prove his loyalty not just to Robb, but to the Stark family. The journey from Harrenhal had been perilous. Bandits prowled the riverlands, and Theon's small escort, 10 northern archers trained by his hand, stayed vigilant. At a forest ambush, Theon's arrows felled 3 attackers, Arya's quick dagger surprising another. "You fight like a wolf," Theon said, earning a rare grin. They shared tales of Winterfell over campfires, Arya recounting her escape, Theon his defiance at Pyke. "Robb trusts you," she said, her voice soft. "So do I." The words warmed Theon, easing the ache of Balon's disownment. Riverrun's great hall glowed with torchlight as Theon led Arya inside, her hood still up. Robb stood at a map table, Sir Brynden Tully at his side, discussing Tywin's movements. Catelyn, her face etched with worry, spotted Theon and nodded, her trust now firm after Harrenhal. "My lord." Theon said, voice steady, "I bring someone you've missed." Arya lowered her hood, her tangled hair framing a defiant face. Robb froze, his grey eyes wide. "Arya," he whispered, rushing forward. Their embrace silenced the hall, northern lords murmuring in awe. Catelyn gasped, tears falling, and pulled Arya close, her voice breaking. "My girl." Robb clasped Theon's shoulder, his voice thick. "You brought her home, Theon, I'll never forget this." Catelyn met Theon's gaze, her eyes warm. "Your family now, Sir Theon," she said, the words shattering his doubts. Northern lords raised cups, toasting Stark's arrow, but Theon felt the weight of Sansa, still captive in King's Landing. He vowed silently to free her too. Theon trained Riverrun's guards, his arrows splitting targets, Arya watching with a spark of admiration. She practiced with a wooden sword, mimicking his stance, and Theon chuckled, teaching her an archer's grip. A raven brought news of Tywin regrouping, and Theon warned Robb of Cersei's Tyrell alliance, urging envoys to Highgarden. Robb nodded, trusting Theon's counsel. Catelyn joined them, her voice firm. "We'll hold the north, thanks to you, Theon." The praise steadied him, but Ashaz's imprisoned presence in Riverrun reminded him of his torn roots. As night fell, Theon stood on Riverrun's battlements, Arya's reunion a beacon in his heart. Westeros's wars raged, but the Stark's faith anchored him. His bow gleamed, ready for Tywin's next move. Theon's loyalty, forged in blood and trust, would shield the north, no matter the cost. Chapter 9, The Tyrell Gambit. Highgarden's rose-scented air filled Theon Greyjoy's lungs as he rode through its golden gates, Sir Brynden Tully at his side, their Stark banners a stark contrast to the Tyrell's verdant sigil. The North's victories at Oxcross and Harrenhal had shaken Tywin Lannister's hold, but Theon's discovery of a Tyrell Lannister alliance letter in Harrenhal demanded action. Robb Stark, trusting Theon's cunning, sent him to negotiate with Margaery Tyrell, hoping to secure the Reach's neutrality and deny Cersei vital support. Theon's bow hung across his back, his quiver light for diplomacy, but his iron-born instincts kept him wary. The Tyrells, led by the shrewd Olenna, played a dangerous game in Westeros's wars, and Theon's mission could tip the balance. Highgarden's hall gleamed with tapestries, its tables laden with fruits and wine. Margaery Tyrell, her auburn hair cascading, greeted them with a smile, her brother Loras at her side, his knightly armor polished. Olenna, the Queen of Thorns, sat at the head, her eyes sharp as daggers. "Sir Theon, Sir Brynden," Margaery said, her voice honeyed, "the North's fame precedes you. What brings Robb Stark's men to our humble reach?" Theon stepped forward, his voice steady. "King Robb seeks peace with House Tyrell. We know of your talks with Cersei Lannister. Join us, or at least stand aside, and the North spares your lands." Olenna's laugh was sharp. "Bold words, Ironborn. Why should we trust a Stark puppet over the Iron Throne?" Theon's jaw tightened, but Brynden's gruff voice cut in. "The Lannisters bleed, my lady. Robb holds Harrenhal, Oxcross is his, and Tywin's armies falter. Choose wisely." Loras's hand twitched toward his sword, but Margaery's raised hand stilled him. "We seek only the Reach's safety," she said, her eyes on Theon. "What does Robb offer?" Theon leaned forward, his iron-born charm honed by years among Starks. "Neutrality buys you peace. Robb spares Highgarden, trades grain for steel, and shields you from Stannis Baratheon's zeal. Cersei's throne crumbles, join the winning side." Olenna's eyes narrowed, assessing. "You're no mere archer, Sir Theon. Your tongue's as sharp as your arrows." Theon met her gaze, sensing her game. "I serve Robb, my lady. My arrows serve the North." Negotiations stretched late, Olenna probing for weaknesses, Loras bristling at Brynden's bluntness. Theon's tales of northern victories swayed Margaery, her smile warming, but Olenna's skepticism lingered. "Neutrality, then," Olenna said at last, her voice crisp. "But if Robb falters, we'll reconsider." Theon nodded, sealing the pact, though Olenna's cunning worried him. Cersei's reach was long and the Tyrell's loyalty fragile. Back at Riverrun, Theon reported success to Robb, who clapped his shoulder. "You've outdone yourself, Theon." Catelyn Stark, now fully trusting, nodded approval. "Well done, Sir Theon." Theon trained Riverrun's archers, arrows splitting targets, but Olenna's words echoed, "Robb must not falter." A raven warned of Stannis' fleet nearing Blackwater Bay, complicating Robb's plans. Theon studied maps, his bow ready. Westeros's alliances shifted like sand, but Theon's loyalty to Robb held firm, his arrows poised to guard the north. Chapter 10, The Northern Bastion. Riverrun's war room buzzed under torchlight as Theon Greyjoy stood beside Robb Stark, maps of Westeros spread before them. A raven had brought grim news. Balon Greyjoy, Theon's father, was dead, swept from Pyke's bridge in a storm. The Iron Islands reeled, and Asha Greyjoy, still Robb's captive, had sent for Theon. His victory at Torrens Square, knighthood at Oxcross, and diplomacy at Highgarden had cemented his place among the Starks, but Balon's death stirred his iron-born blood. Catelyn Stark, her trust now unwavering, watched him with concern, while Robb's grey eyes held steady faith. Theon's bow rested against the wall, his quiver full, but this battle was of words, not arrows. Theon visited Asha in Riverrun's dungeons, her chains clinking as she stood. "Father's gone," she said, her voice flat but eyes sharp. "The Ironborn need a leader. Claim the Seastone chair, Theon." His heart lurched. Pyke's throne, his birthright, dangled before him, but memories of Robb's trust, Arya's reunion, and Catelyn's newfound faith anchored him. "I'm Robb's man," Theon said, his voice firm. "The North's my home." Asha's smirk faded, respect flickering. "Then use Balon's death. Lords like Harlaw waver, sway them to Robb." Theon relayed Asha's counsel to Robb, who nodded thoughtfully. "Balon's death weakens the Ironborn. Can you turn them?" Theon's chest tightened, the weight of his fractured heritage heavy. "Some will follow with promises of trade and peace." Robb clapped his shoulder. "Do it, Theon. I name you Warden of the Western Coasts." The title stunned Theon, a bold honor that silenced northern lords' whispers. Catelyn smiled, her voice warm. "You've earned it, Sir Theon." The hall cheered, but Theon felt torn, neither fully Stark nor Greyjoy. He sent ravens to Ironborn houses, offering alliance under Robb's banner. House Harlaw's ships, already pledged, grew to a fleet as houses Blacktide and Goodbrother joined, swayed by Theon's promises and Balon's failed raids. The North's coast strengthened, a bastion against Tywin Lannister's looming counterstrike. Theon trained Riverrun's archers, his arrows splitting oak, their precision a testament to his skill. Northerners now called him Warden Wolf, but Asha's words lingered. "Claim your birthright." A raven warned of Tywin regrouping in the Westerlands, and Theon urged Robb to strike first. "We hold Harrenhal, the coasts, and Tyrell neutrality," Theon said. "Hit Casterly Rock." Robb nodded, trusting his counsel. Catelyn joined them, her voice steady. "You've united us, Theon. The North stands strong." The praise eased his doubts, but Sansa's captivity in King's Landing gnawed at him, a vow unkept. As dawn broke, Theon stood on Riverrun's battlements, the Trident's waters glinting below. Balon's death closed a door, but Robb's trust opened another. He studied Ironborn sigils, plotting to secure more allies. His bow gleamed, ready for Tywin's wrath. Westeros's wars tested every bond, but Theon's loyalty to Robb was ironclad, a beacon in the North's rising storm. Chapter 11. The defense of Riverrun. Riverrun's stone walls stood resolute against the Trident's rushing waters, but the air crackled with tension as Theon Greyjoy surveyed the horizon from the battlements. Tywin Lannister's army, a glittering sea of crimson and gold, advanced through the Riverlands, aiming to crush Robb Stark's stronghold. Theon's bow rested against his shoulder, arrows fletched with raven feathers ready in his quiver. Robb, now king in the north and warden of the Western Coast's chosen champion, relied on Theon's tactics after victories at Oxcross and Harrenhal. The Tyrell's neutrality and Ironborn defections, secured by Theon's diplomacy, had bolstered Robb's cause, but Tywin's wrath threatened all. Catelyn Stark, her trust in Theon now ironclad, stood beside Robb, her eyes scanning the enemy lines. Theon had fortified Riverrun's defences, drawing on Ironborn cunning and northern grit. Trenches lined the approaches, archers perched on towers, and House Harlaw's ships patrolled the rivers. "Tywin will strike the eastern gate," Theon told Robb in the war room, pointing to a map. "He expects us to overcommit there, then flank from the south." Robb's grey eyes met his, trusting. "How do we counter?" Theon traced a path. "Faint weakness at the gate, draw them in, then hit their flank with cavalry." Sir Brynden Tully nodded, his gruff voice approving. "Clever lad." Catelyn's smile was warm. "You've become our shield, Sir Theon." Dawn broke as Lannister horns blared, their siege engines lumbering forward. Theon led the archers, his voice steady. "Hold until my mark." Arrows flew, felling Lannister scouts as Tywin's men stormed the eastern gate. Theon's feint worked. Robb's spearmen held just long enough to lure the enemy deep. Then Theon signaled, and northern cavalry, led by Great John Umber, thundered from the south, smashing Tywin's flank. Theon's bow sang, arrows piercing knight's armor, his precision deadly. Grey wind, Robb's direwolf, tore through the chaos, scattering Lannister ranks. Tywin's forces wavered, but Jaime Lannister rallied them, his golden hair flashing under a helm. Theon spotted him, knocking an arrow, but shifted aim to a siege tower, toppling it with a flaming shaft. The battle turned, Lannisters retreating in disarray. Theon led a sortie, his sword clashing with a Lannister captain's, until Robb's forces secured victory. Tywin fled, his army broken, leaving Riverrun standing tall in the great hall. Robb clasped Theon's shoulder, his voice ringing. "You saved Riverrun, Sir Theon." Northern lords cheered, chanting "Warden Wolf," and Catelyn embraced him, whispering, "You're our son now." Theon's heart swelled, but Asha's imprisoned presence reminded him of his roots. A raven from Pyke warned of a kingsmoot. Balon's death left the Ironborn leaderless. Theon visited Asha, who urged, "Go, sway them for Robb." He nodded, vowing to secure Ironborn loyalty. Theon trained Riverrun's archers, arrows splitting targets, but Cersei's schemes in King's Landing loomed. He warned Robb, studying maps for the next strike. Westeros's wars demanded vigilance, and Theon's loyalty, forged in battle, would shield the north, his bow ready for Pyke's chaos. Chapter 12. The Ironborn Kingsmoot. Pyke's salt-crusted cliffs loomed as Theon Greyjoy stepped onto its rocky shore, the wind howling like a dirge. The Kingsmoot called Ironborn lords to choose a new ruler after Balon's death, and Theon, Robb Stark's warden of the western coasts, had sailed to support Asha Greyjoy against their uncle Euron. His bow hung across his back, but words, not arrows, would shape this battle. Robb's trust, Catelyn's newfound faith, and the North's victories at Riverrun and Harrenhal anchored Theon, but Pyke's damp halls stirred his Ironborn blood. Asha, freed by Robb to attend under guard, walked beside him, her eyes sharp. "Win them for Robb, Theon," she whispered. "Or Euron burns us all." The Kingsmoot gathered on Old Wick, lords crowded under a whalebone roof, their voices a cacophony of salt and steel. Theon's heart pounded. Pyke was home, yet alien. Lord Roderick Harlaw, already swayed to Robb, nodded grimly, his ships bolstering the north. But Euron Greyjoy, cloaked in shadow, strode forward, his single eye gleaming. "I claim the Seastone chair," Euron declared, brandishing a dragon horn that chilled Theon's spine. "I'll conquer Westeros," the lords roared, swayed by his promises of plunder. Asha stepped up, her voice cutting through. "Euron offers dreams, I offer strength, alliance with Robb Stark, who holds the north and defies Cersei Lannister." Theon spoke next, his voice steady despite the crowd's murmurs. "I was Ironborn, raised by Starks. Robb's no enemy, he offers trade, peace, glory, join him and we thrive." Lords like Blacktide and Goodbrother, softened by Theon's earlier ravens, nodded, but Euron's laugh was cold. "A Stark's dog begs for scraps." Theon's jaw clenched, but he held firm. "Robb crushed Tywin at Riverrun. Follow Asha and we'll share his victories." Some lords cheered, but Euron's horn sounded, its eerie wail swaying the crowd. "I'll give you dragons," Euron roared, and the vote turned. Asha lost, Euron crowned amidst cheers. Theon's heart sank, but Asha grabbed his arm. "Flee now." They slipped through the chaos, boarding Salt Serpent with Harlaw's men. Arrows flew as Euron's loyalists pursued, but Theon's archery repelled them, shafts piercing the dusk. At sea, Asha cursed. "Euron's mad, but some lords will resist. Rally them for Robb." Theon nodded, vowing to weaken Euron's grip. Back at Riverrun, Robb embraced Theon, trusting his report. "You tried, Warden Wolf. We'll fight Euron with steel." Catelyn, her faith absolute, called him family. Theon trained archers, arrows splitting oak, but Sansa's captivity in King's Landing gnawed at him. He warned Robb of Cersei's plots, urging a strike on the capital. Northern lords cheered his return, their doubts gone. Theon studied maps, plotting Ironborn resistance and Lannister downfall. Westeros's tides shifted, but Theon's loyalty to Robb was a beacon, his bow ready for the wars ahead. Chapter 13. the quest for Sansa King's Landing's stench of smoke, and rot clung to Theon Greyjoy as he slipped through its shadowed alleys, cloaked in drab wool to blend with the city's underbelly. Robb Stark, now king in the north, had sent him to scout the capital and, if possible, rescue Sansa Stark, still a hostage of Cersei Lannister. Theon's bow was hidden beneath his cloak, arrows tucked in a satchel, but stealth, not steel, was his weapon tonight. The North's victories at Riverrun and Harrenhal, bolstered by Theon's tactics and the Tyrell's neutrality, had weakened Cersei's grip, but King's Landing bristled with gold cloaks and Jaime Lannister's knights. Theon's heart pounded. Sansa's safety was a vow he'd made to Robb and Arya, and failure would haunt him. The Red Keep loomed, its crimson stones glowing under torchlight. Theon had bribed a smuggler, a wiry man named Davos, for a servant's garb and a map of the Keep's tunnels. His iron-born instincts, honed by Pyke's treacherous cliffs, guided him through the city's maze. Memories of Sansa's gentle smile in Winterfell drove him, clashing with the guilt of his failed Kingsmoot, where Euron Greyjoy seized power. Ashar, now allied with Robb, had urged Theon to focus on the Starks, and he would not falter. He entered the keep through a forgotten passage, the air damp and heavy. Guards patrolled above, their boots echoing. Theon moved silently, his bow ready, until he reached the maiden vault where Sansa was held. Peering through a grate, he saw her, pale, red-haired, stitching under a guard's watch. His heart ached, but 2 gold cloaks blocked the door and more patrolled nearby. Theon knocked an arrow, aiming for silence, but a servant's shout, "Intruder," shattered his plan. He loosed, felling one guard, but the other raised the alarm. Theon fled, arrows hissing to cover his retreat, slipping back into the tunnels as horns blared. He escaped to Flea Bottom, heart heavy with failure. Hiding in a tavern, Theon overheard whispers of Cersei's desperation, Joffrey's cruelty, Tyrion Lannister's trial for his murder, and Cersei's plotting with sellswords. Theon sent a raven to Robb, warning of her schemes and his failure to free Sansa. "I'll try again," he wrote, vowing not to rest. Returning to Riverrun, he faced Robb, his voice low. "She's alive but guarded. I'll find another way." Robb clasped his shoulder, grey eyes steady. "You risked all, Theon. We'll save her together." Catelyn Stark, now calling Theon's son, nodded approval. "Your heart's with us, Sir Theon." Northern lords cheered, but Theon's failure stung. He trained Riverrun's archers, arrows splitting targets, his mind on Sansa. A raven from Margaery Tyrell reaffirmed neutrality, easing tensions, but Stannis Baratheon's fleet loomed. Theon studied maps, plotting another rescue. Westeros's wars demanded cunning, and Theon's loyalty to Robb burned bright, his bow ready to pierce Cersei's schemes and bring Sansa home. Chapter 14. The fray packed. The twins' grim towers straddled the Green Fork, their stones slick with mist as Theon Greyjoy rode beside Robb Stark toward House Frey's stronghold. Robb, crowned king in the north, needed Walder Frey's bridge to secure his supply lines against Cersei Lannister's faltering forces. Theon's bow hung across his back, his quiver full, but diplomacy, not arrows, was his task today. The North's victories, bolstered by Theon's defense of Riverrun and Ironborn defections, gave Robb leverage, but Walder Frey's cunning was infamous. Theon's failure to free Sansa gnawed at him, but Catelyn Stark's trust, now absolute, and Robb's faith steadied him. A marriage pact, Robb to a Frey girl, sealed the alliance, and Theon's vigilance would ensure its success. The Frey's hall reeked of damp wood and greed, Walder Frey's withered face sneering from his high seat. "So the young wolf begs my bridge," Walder rasped, eyeing Robb. Theon stood close, hand near his dagger, sensing treachery in the old man's smirk. Robb's voice was firm. "I offer alliance, Lord Frey. Marry your daughter Rosalind to me, and the North stands with you." Catelyn, beside Robb, nodded, her presence calming. Walder's eyes flicked to Theon. "The Ironborn traitor, why trust him?" Theon met his gaze. "I'm Robb's man, my lord. My arrows guard the North." The wedding feast filled the hall, tables groaning with food, but Theon's instinct screamed danger. He'd stationed archers outside, trained by his hand, and kept Grey Wind, Robb's direwolf, nearby. As Rosalind, shy and fair, wed Robb under torchlight, Theon scanned the crowd. A flicker of steel, a Frey man drunk drawing a blade, caught his eye. Theon moved, tackling the man, his dagger at the traitor's throat. "Speak," Theon hissed. The man confessed, Walder's kin, loyal to Cersei, planned an ambush post-feast. Theon signaled Robb, who drew his sword, grey wind snarling. Northern guards seized the plotters, and Walder, cornered, swore loyalty, his face pale. Robb's voice rang out. "House Frey is ours, but treachery dies here." The hall fell silent, northern lords cheering as Theon bound the conspirators. Catelyn embraced him, whispering, "You're our son, Theon." Walder grudgingly nodded respect, his alliance secured. Robb clasped Theon's shoulder. "You saved us again." Theon's heart swelled, but Sansa's captivity and Euron Greyjoy's ironborn threat loomed. He trained the twins' archers, arrows splitting posts, his mind on Cersei's next move. A raven warned of Tywin regrouping in the Westerlands, and Theon urged Robb to strike Casterly Rock. "We have the Freys, Tyrell's neutral ironborn ships," Theon said. Robb nodded, trusting him. Catelyn's voice was warm. "You've united us, Sir Theon." As night fell, Theon stood by the Green Fork, his bow gleaming. Westeros's wars tested every bond, but Theon's loyalty to Robb was unbreakable, his arrows ready to carve the North's victory. Chapter 15, The Fall of Casterly Rock. The sea roared against Casterly Rock's cliffs, its golden walls towering above as Theon Greyjoy stood at the helm of Salt Serpent, leading a fleet of ironborn ships from House Harlaw. Robb Stark, king in the north, had tasked Theon, his warden of the western coasts, with striking the Lannister stronghold to shatter Tywin's power. The North's victories at Riverrun, Harrenhal, and the Frey alliance, bolstered by Theon's tactics, had paved the way, but Casterly Rock was a fortress of legend. Theon's bow rested against the rail, arrows fletched with raven feathers ready, his ironborn blood singing in the salt air. Catelyn Stark's trust, now absolute, and Robb's faith anchored him, but Sansa's captivity and Cersei's schemes gnawed at his resolve. Theon studied the rock's defenses from the deck, its coastal gates reinforced but vulnerable to ironborn cunning. "We strike at night," he told Lord Roderick Harlaw, his ally since Balon's death. "Tunnels run beneath, my father spoke of them." Harlaw nodded, his grizzled face set. Theon's plan, born of Pyke's lessons and Robb's trust, relied on stealth, ships to feint a frontal assault, drawing guards while Theon led a small force through the tunnels. Robb, commanding the land army, would breach the main gate once Theon signaled. Catelyn had blessed the plan, her voice warm. "You'll bring us victory, Sir Theon." Moonlight cloaked the sea as Theon's fleet sailed, longships cutting through waves. He led 20 men, cloaked in black, into the tunnels, their boots silent on damp stone. Theon's bow was ready, his heart steady despite memories of Pyke's betrayal. The tunnels echoed with drips, guiding them beneath the rock. A Lannister patrol loomed, and Theon's arrow felled the leader, silent and swift. His men dispatched the rest, their blades quick. Emerging inside, Theon signaled with a torch, and Robb's army stormed the gates. Grey winds howl, piercing the night. The battle raged, Theon's archers felling Lannister knights from the walls, his ironborn allies scaling cliffs with ropes. Tywin Lannister, cornered in the Great Hall, fought fiercely, Jaime at his side. Theon's arrow grazed Jaime, forcing surrender. Tywin, his face a mask of rage, dropped his sword as Robb entered, sword bloodied. "Yield, Lord Tywin," Robb commanded. Tywin knelt defeated, and Robb, merciful, exiled him to the wall. Northern cheers echoed, Theon's name chanted as Warden Wolf. Catelyn embraced Theon, her eyes proud. "You've broken the Lannisters, son." Robb clasped his shoulder, naming him hero of the rock. Theon trained new archers, arrows splitting stone, but warned Robb of Cersei's lingering schemes in King's Landing. A raven hinted at Daenerys Targaryen's approach across the narrow sea, her dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion, a new threat. Theon studied maps, his bow gleaming. Westeros's wars demanded vigilance, and Theon's loyalty to Robb would shield the north, ready for Cersei and dragons alike. Chapter 16, The Dragon's Shadow. Riverrun's war room flickered with candlelight as Theon Greyjoy pored over maps, the trident's roar a distant hum. Casterly Rock's fall had crippled Tywin Lannister, exiled to the wall, but a new threat loomed. Daenerys Targaryen, the Khaleesi, whose Khalasar and dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion, were whispered across Westeros. Theon, Robb Stark's warden of the western coasts, had received reports from scouts. Daenerys sailed from Essos, her power growing. His victories at Harrenhal, Riverrun, and Casterly Rock, bolstered by iron-born ships and the Frey alliance, made Robb's north a beacon, but Daenerys' dragons cast a shadow. Theon's bow rested nearby, his quiver full, but this challenge demanded diplomacy. Catelyn Stark, now calling him son, and Robb's trust steadied him, though Sansa's captivity gnawed. Theon addressed Robb, his voice steady. Daenerys lands soon. Her dragons change everything. We must ally with her, not fight. Robb's grey eyes narrowed, wary. Dragons burn kingdoms, Theon. Can we trust her? Catelyn nodded, her trust in Theon absolute. Sir, Theon's right. Cersei's weakened, but Daenerys could crush us. Theon proposed a parley, offering to meet Daenerys himself. Robb clasped his shoulder. Go, Warden Wolf, speak for the north. Theon sailed to Dragonstone, where Daenerys had landed, her khalasar encamped under Drogon's shadow. The dragon's scales glinted black, its roar shaking Theon's bones. Daenerys, silver hair braided, met him in a stone hall, her violet eyes piercing. Sir Theon Greyjoy. She said, her voice calm but commanding. Why does Robb Stark send an Ironborn? Theon bowed, his Ironborn charm tempered by Stark honor. I'm Robb's man, my lady. The North fights Cersei Lannister, as do you. Join us and we'll share Westeros's peace. Daenerys' lips curved, intrigued. Robb's victories impress me, but I seek the Iron Throne. Theon's heart raced, but he held firm. Robb seeks justice, not crowns. Ally with him and your dragons fly with wolves. Daenerys studied him, Drogon's shadow looming outside. You defied your kin for Stark, she said. Why? Theon met her gaze. Robb's my brother in all but blood. I fight for the North's survival. Her nod was slight but promising. I'll meet Robb, but my throne is mine. Theon secured a parley, his diplomacy a lifeline. Back at Riverrun, Robb praised him. You've brought us hope, Theon. Catelyn embraced him, her voice warm. You're our strength, son. Theon trained archers, arrows splitting targets, but Daenerys' dragons haunted him. A raven warned of Stannis Baratheon's fleet nearing Blackwater Bay, and Cersei's schemes persisted. Theon studied dragon lore, his bow ready. Northern lords chanted Warden Wolf, their trust absolute. As stars rose, Theon stood on Riverrun's battlements, Daenerys' shadow looming. Westeros's wars demanded unity, and Theon's loyalty to Robb would forge an alliance, his arrows poised for dragons and foes alike. Chapter 17. The Vale's Knights. The Erie's alabaster spires pierced the clouds, perched atop the giant's lance, as Theon Greyjoy ascended its treacherous path, his cloak whipping in the mountain wind. Robb Stark, king in the north, had sent Theon to secure House Arryn's support, knowing Lysa Arryn's knights could tip the balance against Cersei Lannister and Stannis Baratheon. Theon's bow hung across his back, arrows tucked in his quiver, but diplomacy was his weapon here. His victories at Casterly Rock, Riverrun, and Harrenhal, bolstered by iron-born ships and the Frey alliance, had made Robb's north a powerhouse, but Daenerys Targaryen's dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion, loomed, their shadow urging unity. Catelyn Stark, now calling Theon son, had blessed his mission, her trust absolute. Robb's faith anchored him, but Sansa's captivity gnawed, a vow unkept. The Vale's air was thin, sharpening Theon's senses as he reached the Erie's gates. Sir Brynden Tully, his gruff companion, rode beside him, their stark banners stark against the snow. Lysa Arryn, pale and trembling, received them in the high hall, her son Robin fidgeting at her side. Why does the North disturb my peace? Lysa whined, her eyes darting. Theon stepped forward, his ironborn charm tempered by Stark honor. Lady Lysa, Robb Stark fights for justice, not conquest. Cersei's throne crumbles and Stannis' zeal threatens all. Join us and your knights ride with victors. Lysa clutched Robin, her voice shrill. The Vale stays safe behind our mountains. Bryndon's bluntness cut in. Safe until dragons burn your fields, my lady. Robb holds Casterly Rock, Tywin's broken. Stand with us. Theon sensed Lysa's fear, recalling Catelyn's tales of her sister's fragility. Your sister Catelyn sends her love. Theon said softly, she trusts me as does Robb. We'll shield the Vale, but we need your knights. Lysa's eyes softened, wavering, negotiations stretched, Lysa's paranoia clashing with Theon's patience. He shared tales of Robb's victories, his archery at Riverrun and Daenerys' parley, painting a North united. Robin, wide-eyed, begged for knightly glory, swaying Lysa. Very well, she said at last, her voice reluctant. My knights ride, but Robin stays. Theon nodded, sealing the pact, though Lysa's instability worried him. The Vale's strength was Robb's, but fragile. Back at Riverrun, Theon reported success, Robb clasping his shoulder. "You've brought us the Vale, Warden Wolf." Catelyn embraced him, her voice warm. "You're our heart, Theon." Northern lords cheered, chanting his name, their trust absolute. Theon trained archers, arrows splitting targets, but Daenerys' dragons haunted him. A raven warned of Stannis' fleet nearing Blackwater Bay, and Cersei's schemes persisted. Theon studied dragon lore, fearing Drogon's fire, his bow ready. The Vale's knights marched, bolstering Robb's army, but Westeros' wars demanded more. Theon's loyalty to Robb burned bright, his arrows poised to unite the realm against Stannis and dragons alike. Chapter 18. The Stark Targaryen packed Dragonstone's black stone walls loomed over the sea, its carved gargoyles glaring as Theon Greyjoy stood before Daenerys Targaryen's camp, the air thick with sulphur. Robb Stark, king in the north, had tasked Theon with forging an alliance against Stannis Baratheon, whose fleet threatened Blackwater Bay. Theon's bow rested at his side, arrows ready, but his ironborn charm and stark honor would seal this pact. His victories at Casterly Rock, Riverrun, and the Vale's alliance had strengthened Robb, but Daenerys' dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion, changed Westeros' wars. Catelyn Stark, calling Theon's son, and Robb's trust anchored him, though Sansa's captivity and Cersei's schemes lingered. Daenerys met Theon in a war tent, her silver hair braided, violet eyes piercing. Drogon loomed outside, its scales glinting, its roar shaking Theon's bones. "Sir Theon, Warden Wolf," she said, her voice commanding. "Robb seeks my dragons. Why should I trust a Northman?" Theon bowed, steady despite the dragon's shadow. "Robb fights for justice, my lady, as you do. Stannis burns all who defy him, and Cersei's throne crumbles. Unite with us, and we'll crush them together." Daenerys' lips curved, intrigued. "You defied your kin for Stark." "Speak plainly, what does Robb offer?" Theon leaned forward, his voice firm. "Robb holds the North, Vale, Riverlands, and ironborn ships. He seeks no crown, only peace. Fight with him, and your dragons rule the skies, your throne secured." Daenerys studied him, her advisors, Jorah Mormont and Missandei, watching. "Stannis claims my birthright," she said. "Robb would share Westeros." Theon nodded. "He'd rule the North, you the South, united against foes. I've seen Robb's honor, he keeps his word." Daenerys' eyes softened, weighing his sincerity. Negotiations stretched, Daenerys probing Robb's strength, Theon recounting victories at Harrenhal and Casterly Rock. Drogon's roars punctuated their talks, unnerving Theon, but he held firm, his loyalty to Robb unwavering. "My Khalasar is vast." Daenerys said, "Robb's army matches it." Theon smiled. "With your dragons, we're unstoppable." She nodded, impressed. "I'll meet Robb, but my throne is mine." Theon secured a parley, his diplomacy binding North and dragons. At Riverrun, Robb and Daenerys met, Theon at Robb's side. Grey Wind eyed Drogon warily, but Robb's handshake with Daenerys sealed the pact. "We fight Stannis together," Robb said, trusting Theon's work. Catelyn embraced Theon, whispering, "You're our family, Theon." Northern lords cheered, united with Daenerys' Khalasar. Theon trained archers, arrows splitting oak, preparing for dragonfire. A raven warned of Stannis' assault and Cersei's flight from King's Landing. Theon studied maps, his bow gleaming, ready to face Stannis' fleet. As stars rose, Theon stood on Riverrun's battlements, Daenerys' dragons a new dawn. Westeros' wars demanded unity, and Theon's loyalty to Robb had forged an alliance to reshape the realm. His arrows would guard the north, ready for Stannis' wrath and Cersei's shadow, his heart bound to the Starks and their dragon allies. Chapter 19. The fall of Stannis. Blackwater Bay churned under a storm's wrath, its waves crashing against the hulls of Stannis Baratheon's fleet as Theon Greyjoy stood on the deck of Salt Serpent, bow in hand. Robb Stark, king in the north, and Daenerys Targaryen, allied through Theon's diplomacy, had united their forces to crush Stannis, whose zealot army and navy threatened Westeros' fragile peace. Theon's quiver brimmed with arrows, their raven fletchings dark against the grey dawn. His victories at Casterly Rock, Riverrun, and the Vale's alliance had made Robb's north a juggernaut, but Stannis' fleet, bolstered by Melisandre's fire magic, was a formidable foe. Daenerys' dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, Viserion, circled above, their roars shaking Theon's bones, a testament to his successful pact. Robb, aboard the flagship Winter's Fang, signaled the attack, his direwolf grey wind snarling at the prow. Theon led the iron-born ships, House Harlaw's longships slicing through the waves, their kraken banners snapping. Stannis' galleys loomed, their decks aglow with torches, Melisandre's red robes a beacon on the flagship. Theon's heart raced, memories of Pyke's defiance clashing with his vow to Robb. Sansa's captivity in King's Landing, Cersei's flight after Casterly Rock's fall, and Euron Greyjoy's iron-born chaos lingered, but Theon focused on the battle, his bow steady. "Archers," Theon shouted, knocking an arrow, his voice carried over the storm, ironborn and northern bowmen lining the rails. "Target their sails." Arrows flew, shredding canvas as Drogon dove, its fire engulfing a galley. Stannis' ships returned fire, flaming bolts arcing, but Theon's tactics, feinting retreats to lure enemies into dragon range, worked flawlessly. He loosed an arrow, piercing a captain's chest, his precision honed by years of training. Melisandre's chance rose, a shadow forming on the water, but Rhaegal's flames scattered it. Daenerys' command sharp, Theon's ship boarded a listing galley, his sword clashing with a Baratheon knight's. Steel rang, waves rocking the deck until Theon's blade found the man's heart. Stannis, aboard his flagship, rallied his men, but Robb's cavalry, landed by Vale knights, stormed the shore, cutting off retreat. Theon signaled Daenerys, and Viserion torched Stannis' flagship, its mast collapsing. Melisandre's screams faded as flames consumed her, and Stannis fell, an arrow Theon's through his throat. The fleet broke, survivors fleeing into the storm. Robb's forces cheered, dragon roars mingling with wolf howls. Theon met Robb on shore, soaked but triumphant. "You sank their heart, Warden Wolf," Robb said, clasping his shoulder. Daenerys landed, Drogon behind her, nodding respect. "Your arrows won the day, Sir Theon." Northern lords and Khalasar warriors chanted his name, but Theon's thoughts turned to Sansa and Cersei still at large. He trained archers on the beach, arrows splitting driftwood, warning Robb of Cersei's sellswords. A raven hinted at her hiding in dawn, and Theon vowed to hunt her, his bow gleaming. As dusk fell, Theon stood by Blackwater's edge, Stannis' defeat a milestone. Westeros's wars raged, but Robb's reign, forged by Theon's loyalty, stood strong, his arrows ready for Cersei's shadow. Chapter 20. The Wolf's Reign. Winterfell's rebuilt walls glowed under a northern sun, its grey stones a symbol of Robb Stark's reign as king in the north, now ruler of a united Westeros. Theon Greyjoy, his trusted warden of the western coasts, stood in the great hall, his bow at his side, arrows tucked in a quiver etched with wolves and krakens. The wars that tore the realm, against Cersei Lannister, Stannis Baratheon and ironborn rebels, had ended, thanks to Theon's victories at Casterly Rock, Blackwater Bay, and his alliances with the Vale and Daenerys Targaryen. Sansa Stark, freed from King's Landing by Theon's final mission, sat beside Robb, her smile warm. Daenerys, her dragon sated, had departed for Essos, vowing peace. Theon's heart, once torn between ironborn blood and Stark loyalty, was whole, his place among wolves secure. The hall buzzed with lords, Northern, Vale, Riverlands and Ironborn, celebrating Robb's coronation as Westeros's king. Arya Stark, fierce and grown, sparred with Theon's archers outside, her laughter echoing. Catelyn Stark, her trust in Theon long solidified, nodded from Robb's side, her presence a quiet strength. Theon's journey began at Pyke, defying Balon, and led here, through battles, diplomacy and sacrifice. Cersei, hunted by Theon's scouts in dawn, had vanished, her sellswords scattered. Euron Greyjoy's ironborn rebellion faltered, a Shah ruling Pyke under Robb's banner, her respect for Theon hard won. Robb rose, his crown simple iron, his voice clear. "Westeros stands united because of you, my lords, my family, my brother, Sir Theon." The hall cheered, chanting Warden Wolf. Theon bowed, his ironborn roots a quiet hum beneath northern pride. Robb had named him Warden, tasked with guarding coasts and training archers, a role Theon embraced. Sansa approached, her voice soft. "You brought me home, Theon, thank you." Her words eased the ache of his failed kingsmoot, his loyalty rewarded. Theon trained Winterfell's archers, arrows splitting targets, their skill a legacy of his teaching. He shared tales with Arya, her dagger flashing as they sparred, laughing over Winterfell's memories. Robb joined them, grey wind at his heel, discussing peace with Dawn and trade with Essos. "You built this, Theon," Robb said, grey eyes warm. Theon shook his head. "I followed you, my king," but Robb's trust, forged in blood, was his crown. A raven brought news of Cersei's death, poisoned by Dornish foes, ending her threat. Theon studied maps, ensuring no new enemies rose. A Shah visited, her longship docked at White Harbour, pledging Ironborn loyalty. "You're more Stark than Greyjoy," she teased, but her nod was proud. Theon smiled, his bow gleaming, ready for any storm. As snow fell, he stood on Winterfell's walls, Westeros healed by Robb's reign. His loyalty, carved through wars, endured, a beacon for the north, his arrows guarding a realm at peace.